Welcome to a world where the line between light and darkness blurs, where the most chilling stories often emerge from the corners of society we believe to be the safest. Human beings are complex creatures, weaving the tapestry of life with countless threads of hope, dreams, fears, and secrets. Sometimes, a single stray thread can unravel the entire pattern, leaving behind a stain that cannot be erased, a story so horrifying that it lingers in our minds long after the final page is turned. We seek understanding, though we may never fully find it. We stare into the abyss, not because we expect it to answer, but because sometimes a fleeting glimpse into the darkness can make the light appear clearer, more precious. If you are drawn to unsolved mysteries, the intricacies of criminal psychology, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable horror, then you are in the right place. Join me as we delve into a true story of such terror, a story etched deeply into the conscience of a nation. But before we embark on this journey into darkness, I invite you, if you wish to continue exploring profound and thought-provoking stories like this, to subscribe or follow, so you won't miss any chapter of this tale or our future discoveries. Your support allows us to continue telling the stories that must be heard. Now, prepare yourself. The story you are about to hear is a tapestry of brutality, mystery, and the unyielding resolve of the men and women tasked with bringing justice. Let us begin. The city of Los Angeles hummed with its perpetual, restless energy, a symphony of ambition, artifice, and asphalt. Beneath the dazzling veneer of Hollywood lights and sun-kissed beaches, however, a darker, more dissonant chord was about to strike, shattering the fragile peace of ordinary lives and plunging the metropolis into a nightmare. It began subtly, as all great terrors often do. The first victim was a woman named Eleanor Vance, a seemingly innocuous figure, a retired librarian living a quiet life in a charming, if slightly dated, bungalow in Los Feliz. Her discovery on a crisp October morning sent a ripple, not yet a wave, through the local precinct. Detective Sarah Jenkins, a 20-year veteran of the LAPD Homicide Division, with eyes that had seen too much and a cynicism earned through hard experience, was assigned the case. Eleanor's death was brutal. She had been strangled, her body left meticulously posed in her antique armchair, a single, pristine white lily placed delicately in her clasped hands. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, just the chilling tableau of a life extinguished with a methodical, almost artistic precision. What struck Jenkins immediately, besides the sheer depravity, was the peculiar absence of chaos. Serial killers often left a signature, but this felt less like a calling card and more like a carefully constructed scene, a tableau vivant of death. A small, ornate music box sat on a nearby side table, playing a melancholic, almost forgotten nocturne by Chopin. Jenkins, who usually tuned out such details in her pursuit of the raw facts, found its melody unusually unsettling. No forced entry, Detective Officer Miller, a fresh-faced patrolman, stated, his voice barely above a whisper, clearly unnerved by the scene. Neighbors said she was a creature of habit, never left her doors unlocked. Jenkins knelt, her gaze sweeping the room. No sexual assault. No valuables taken. Not a robbery, then. Her finger grazed the smooth, cool petal of the lily. And this is too deliberate. The Chopin piece continued, a mournful waltz in the silent room, a stark contrast to the grim reality. The initial investigation yielded frustratingly little. Eleanor Vance had few enemies, even fewer close friends. Her life was a predictable rhythm of library visits, garden clubs, and quiet evenings. The neighborhood was tight-knit, but no one had seen anything suspicious. The only oddity was the music box. Forensics found no discernible prints on it, only a faint, almost invisible residue that baffled the lab. It was as if the killer had worn gloves of an unknown material or had wiped it clean with an expert touch. 2 weeks later, the ripple became a surge. Arthur Finch, a charismatic, albeit minor, gallery owner in Silver Lake, was found dead in his minimalist loft. Like Eleanor Vance, he had been strangled. Like Eleanor Vance, there was no forced entry, no signs of struggle, and no valuables missing. And like Eleanor Vance, he was meticulously posed, a single white lily placed in his hands, and a different, yet equally somber, Chopin nocturne played from an identical antique music box on a nearby table. The chilling precision, the ritualistic element, it was undeniable now. Los Angeles had a serial killer on its hands. The city held its breath. The media, initially cautious, exploded with headlines. The Lily Killer, they dubbed him, then the Nocturne Killer, as the detail about the music became public. Panic, a slow-burning ember, began to glow. Detective Jenkins felt the weight of it all. Her team was stretched thin, chasing down dead-end leads, interviewing anyone who had ever met Eleanor or Arthur, trying to find a link that simply wasn't there. Two victims, separated by age, profession, and social circles, yet united by a killer's chillingly consistent ritual. Jenkins spent nights hunched over files, the sound of Chopin's nocturnes playing softly in her head, trying to find a pattern, a motive, anything to crack the case open. Her apartment, usually a haven from the chaos of her job, now felt like another extension of the precinct, cluttered with case files and the ghosts of victims. Her coffee intake escalated, and sleep became a luxury she rarely afforded herself. The pressure mounted. Chief Hayes, a gruff but fair man, called Jenkins into his office. "Sarah, the mayor's on my ass. The public is terrified. We need something. Anything. I'm calling in the feds." Jenkins nodded, her jaw tight. She respected Hayes, but the thought of outside interference rankled her. "I understand, Chief. We're doing everything we can." "I know you are. That's why I'm getting you the best. Dr. Eris Thorne, FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. He's arriving tomorrow." Dr. Eris Thorne arrived like a cool, analytical breeze in the overheated, frantic atmosphere of the LAPD. Young, impeccably dressed, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in every detail without effort, Thorne was everything Jenkins was not. Calm, detached, and armed with a prodigious intellect that sometimes felt more like a scalpel than a shield. He spoke in measured tones, his vocabulary precise, his observations disarmingly astute. Their first meeting was a clash of styles. Jenkins, pragmatic and grounded in street-level realities, found Thorne's academic approach almost infuriating. "Detective Jenkins," Thorne began, extending a hand that was firm but not overly demonstrative. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've reviewed the preliminary reports on the way here." "A pleasure," Jenkins replied, her handshake brief. "Anything jump out at you, Doctor? Beyond what's in the reports?" Thorne leaned back, his gaze sweeping over the corkboard covered with victim photos, timelines, and geographical plots. The ritualistic elements are, of course, the most striking. The lilies, the music boxes, the specific choice of Chopin's nocturnes. This isn't random. It suggests a killer who is highly intelligent, organized, and possesses a profound sense of grandiosity. They are not merely killing. They are performing. Jenkins snorted. "Performing? They're gutless murderers, Doctor. They choke people to death in their own homes." Thorne regarded her calmly. "Indeed, and that act, detective, is part of the performance. The lack of forced entry, the absence of struggle, this implies a killer who either charms their way in or is known to the victim. Or, perhaps, they are so skilled at subterfuge that they leave no trace." He walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. "Let's consider the victims." Eleanor Vance, a retired librarian, lived a quiet life. Arthur Finch, a flamboyant art dealer. Superficially, they appear unrelated. "They are unrelated," Jenkins interjected. "We've checked their social circles, financial records, everything. Nothing connects them." "Yet they were chosen," Thorne countered, drawing a circle around each victim's photo on the board, "and targeted with the same precise method. The commonality, then, might not be external but internal. What do these individuals represent, symbolically, to the killer? Or what did they do?" He tapped the board. "The choice of Chopin's nocturnes is also significant. These are pieces often associated with melancholy, introspection, and the quiet beauty of the night. This killer fancies themselves an artist, a connoisseur of suffering, perhaps even a moral arbiter. Jenkins rubbed her temples. Moral arbiter? You're saying this guy thinks he's doing God's work? It's a possibility, Thorne said. Often, killers with such a developed ritual believe they are correcting an imbalance, cleansing society, or imposing their own warped sense of justice. The meticulousness, the control, the staged scene, it speaks to a profound need for power and order in their own chaotic mind. Thorne's analysis, despite Jenkins's initial skepticism, began to chip away at her assumptions. He pointed out subtle inconsistencies she hadn't consciously registered. The specific brand of lily, the rarity of the music boxes, all antique, all different, yet from the same era, and the way the bodies were posed, not simply laid out, but subtly arranged, almost as if in slumber. He speculated the killer might be someone who outwardly appeared normal, blending seamlessly into the city's diverse fabric. Someone educated, with an appreciation for the arts, and a meticulous attention to detail. He's a ghost, Jenkins mused aloud later that week, sharing a late-night coffee with Thorne in the deserted precinct break room. No witnesses, no evidence, nothing. Just the bodies and those damn music boxes. Not a ghost, detective, Thorne corrected softly, sipping his coffee. A shadow. Shadows have substance, they just hide in plain sight. We need to understand what casts this particular shadow. The next few weeks were a blur of intense, frustrating work. Jenkins and Thorne delved deeper, examining every aspect of the victims' lives, scrutinizing their pasts, looking for any remote overlap. Thorne developed a preliminary profile. A male, likely white, late 30s to early 50s, intelligent, well-educated, meticulous, socially adept enough to gain entry to homes, but possibly isolated emotionally. He might hold a grudge against specific societal archetypes or professions. He was likely a loner, but not necessarily a recluse. He could be a neighbor, a colleague, even someone they'd interviewed. Just as a weary despair began to settle over the team, the nocturne killer struck again. This time, the victim was Sarah Chun, a vibrant young entrepreneur who had recently launched a successful tech startup. Her death, identical in every chilling detail: strangulation, white lily, Chopin nocturne from an antique music box, sent the city into a full-blown panic. Sarah Chun represented the epitome of modern ambition, a stark contrast to Eleanor Vance's quiet retirement and Arthur Finch's artistic flair. "This is it," Chief Hayes declared at the emergency briefing. "He's escalating. The pattern is evolving. What do we have, Thorne?" Thorne, his face grim, pointed to the victim photos. Eleanor Vance, the keeper of knowledge. Arthur Finch, the purveyor of beauty. Sarah Chun, the architect of innovation. What do they share? They are all, in their own ways, creators, contributors to the cultural or economic tapestry of this city. And they were all, perhaps, perceived as successful, as thriving within the system. Our killer might view them as symbols of a society he despises, or more personally, as individuals who possess something he felt was denied to him. Jenkins stared at the photos, a cold dread twisting in her gut. So he's targeting people who are living successfully, Thorne corrected. Thriving, perhaps even flaunting that success intentionally or not. A new and terrifying possibility began to emerge. This wasn't just random violence, it was targeted, ideological. The killer wasn't just taking lives. He was making a statement. A statement in silence, in lilies, in the mournful strains of a piano. The city, once a symbol of endless possibility, now felt like a cage. Residents locked their doors, peered suspiciously at their neighbors, and canceled evening plans. The fear was palpable, a suffocating blanket woven by a killer who moved unseen, unheard, leaving only death and the haunting echo of Chopin in his wake. Jenkins and Thorne, two disparate personalities united by a common enemy, knew that time was running out. The nocturne killer was enjoying his macabre performance, and the crescendo was far from over. The opening notes of a terrible symphony had been played, and the city braced itself for the next, more terrifying movement. The hunt had begun in earnest, a desperate race against a shadow that danced to its own deadly tune. The escalating terror gripped Los Angeles with an icy hand. The Nocturne Killer, once a chilling rumor, was now a city-wide obsession, dominating every news cycle and whispering through every conversation. The initial shock had curdled into a pervasive fear, altering the very rhythm of daily life. Streets once bustling with night activity became eerily quiet after dusk. People looked at strangers, and even acquaintances, with a new, unsettling suspicion. The pressure on the LAPD, and specifically on Detective Jenkins and Dr. Thorne, became immense, a suffocating weight that pressed down from all sides. Thorne, ever the stoic analyst, seemed to thrive under this pressure, his mind a razor-sharp instrument dissecting every fragment of information. He refined his profile, delving deeper into the psychological nuances of the killer. The choice of victims, Detective, he explained to Jenkins one late night, gesturing to the evolving target board, suggests not just a hatred for success, but a very specific kind of success. Eleanor Vance, the quiet intellectual. Arthur Finch, the aesthete. Sarah Chun, the innovator. They all represent pillars of culture, knowledge, and progress. Our unsub, I believe, sees these as false idols, symbols of a corrupted, superficial society. So he's a nihilist? Jenkins asked, rubbing her weary eyes. Her frustration was a constant companion now, gnawing at her patience. Perhaps, or a radical idealist, so disillusioned with reality that he seeks to violently correct it. The control he exerts over the scene, the lack of struggle, indicates a meticulous planner. Someone who stalks his victims, learns their routines, understands their vulnerabilities. He doesn't just kill, he executes a judgment. Thorne tapped a pen against the board. The antique music boxes are also crucial. They are unique, often passed down through generations. This suggests a killer with an appreciation for history, for craftsmanship, perhaps even a sentimental attachment to the past. He might feel a deep disconnect with modern society. Jenkins stared at the geographical map, pins marking each victim's residence. The dots were spread across different, affluent neighborhoods of LA: Los Feliz, Silver Lake, West Hollywood. No obvious geographical pattern. He's moving around. Doesn't seem tied to one area. He's confident, Thorne affirmed, and mobile. He likely uses his professional life as a cover, allowing him access to different parts of the city without suspicion. Think of professions that demand precision, an eye for detail, or access to private homes. An antique dealer, a restorer, a high-end contractor, a music instructor, even a specialized cleaner. The list of potential suspects, based on Thorne's evolving profile, began to grow, yet none felt quite right. The meticulousness, the artistic flair, it implied someone with a certain social polish, someone who could easily blend in. The team started interviewing professionals in relevant fields, running background checks on thousands, but it was like sifting through sand for a single, invisible grain. Meanwhile, Jenkins felt the case seeping into her personal life. Her small apartment, usually a refuge, now felt permeated by the constant hum of anxiety. She found herself checking locks twice, peering out her blinds at every passing shadow. The melodic strains of Chopin, once innocuous, now evoked a primal fear. Sleep offered little solace, often interrupted by vivid nightmares of silent, lily-strewn rooms. She was a detective, trained to be objective, but the sheer malevolence of this killer was chipping away at her hardened shell. A near miss ignited a desperate surge of hope, then frustration. A witness in West Hollywood, a young woman named Chloe Davison, reported a suspicious encounter. She had seen an older man, well-dressed, in the lobby of Sarah Chen's apartment building days before the murder. He had been holding a package, seemingly waiting for someone. He just gave me a really intense look, she told Jenkins, her voice trembling, like he was sizing me up. Then he just walked out. The sketch artist worked quickly, producing a composite based on Chloe's description. A man in his late 40s or early 50s, distinguished, with sharp features and unsettlingly intense eyes. The image circulated widely, but yielded no definitive leads. Thousands of calls came in, but none were credible. It was a face in the crowd, easily forgotten until fear sharpened the memory. Thorne, however, focused on one detail Chloe mentioned. The man had been humming a classical tune, barely audible. "Did you recognize it?" Thorne pressed. Chloe bit her lip. "No, but it sounded sad, like the music you hear sometimes." "Chopin?" Jenkins stated, a chill running down her spine. "A nocturne." The killer was getting bolder, more arrogant. He wasn't just hiding. He was performing in plain sight, delighting in his undetected proximity to his next victim. This suggested a strong narcissistic streak, a need to prove his superiority to the world, and especially to the authorities. The fourth victim confirmed this escalation in the most horrifying way. Dr. Julian Vance, a renowned historian and professor at UCLA, was found in his sprawling campus office, surrounded by stacks of ancient texts. The scene was identical to the other's strangulation, a single white lily and a Chopin nocturne echoing from an antique music box. But this time, the killer had left a message. Scrawled neatly on a parchment scroll, deliberately placed next to Dr. Vance's body, were Latin words, Quos Deus perdere vult, dementat prius. Whom God wishes to destroy, he first makes mad. "He's mocking us," Jenkins whispered, her voice laced with fury, staring at the scroll. "He's telling us he's going to drive us insane." Thorne picked up the scroll carefully with gloved hands. "More than that, detective. He's revealing his intellectual arrogance. He sees himself as a judge, perhaps even an executioner of the madness he perceives in society. And the choice of Dr. Vance, a historian, reinforces the idea of a warped reverence for the past, a disdain for the present. The team now believed the killer had a deep academic background, or at least a powerful affinity for it. They shifted their focus, poring over university faculty lists, alumni networks, historical societies. The search was vast, but the Latin inscription provided a new, crucial filter. A breakthrough, small but significant, came from the forensic lab. On one of the music boxes, beneath the careful wiping, they found a microscopic fiber, not fabric, but wood. A very specific, rare type of wood, used primarily in antique restoration and high-end instrument making. It was a clue, a tangible thread in the killer's carefully woven web of secrecy. "This is it," Thorne said, his voice unusually excited. "This fiber, combined with the love for antiques, the classical music, the meticulousness, it points to someone in a highly specialized craft. Someone who works with their hands, but also possesses a cultured mind." The profiling narrowed. A male, 40s-50s, intelligent, meticulous, possibly an antique restorer, a luthier, stringed instrument maker, a rare book binder, or a high-end carpenter specializing in historical preservation. Someone with access to specialized materials and a keen eye for detail. Someone who moved in circles where appreciation for the past was paramount. Jenkins and Thorne began to work with a new, urgent synergy. Jenkins's street smarts and relentless pursuit of facts complemented Thorne's deep dives into psychology and symbolism. They started cross-referencing everything. Every antique dealer who had sold a music box recently, every professional with the relevant skills, every academic with a classics background. The strain, however, was immense. Jenkins found herself snapping at her officers, her patience worn thin. Thorne, usually imperturbable, grew gaunt, his eyes holding a haunted quality that belied his calm demeanor. The weight of the deaths, the fear of the next one, pressed down on them. Then a lead. A small, upscale antique shop in Pasadena had reported a theft several months prior. A collection of antique music boxes, along with some rare books on classical composers. The owner, a frail elderly woman named Mrs. Albright, had dismissed it as a random burglary, as nothing else of significant value was taken. But the description of the stolen items was too precise to be a coincidence. Among the stolen books was an obscure treatise on Chopin's nocturnes, with specific annotations about their melancholic beauty. And Mrs. Albright, after seeing the composite sketch of the man from Chloe Davison's testimony, gasped. That man! He used to come into my shop. Not often, but he had a peculiar interest in the music boxes. And he was very polite, very proper. She remembered his name. Elias Thorne. No, wait. Elias Vance. No, that's not right. It was Elias Croft. Yes, Elias Croft. He sometimes gave lectures on classical music appreciation at the local community college. The name hit Jenkins like a thunderbolt. Elias Croft, a music appreciation instructor. It fit the profile almost perfectly. Educated, cultured, a potential connection to the stolen items, and, most chillingly, the ability to blend in. The surname Croft also echoed in Thorne's mind, a subtle, almost imperceptible connection to ancient English history and craftsmanship, a detail only an academic like him would notice. The pieces began to click into place, forming a terrifying mosaic. Elias Croft, an ostensibly respectable figure, had been hiding in plain sight, a shadow among the glittering lights of L.A. The profile, painstakingly built, now had a face, albeit one still shrouded in mystery. The realization brought a surge of adrenaline, but also a fresh wave of dread. Elias Croft was aware of the hunt. He had mocked them with Latin. He had left a trail not to be caught, but to prove his intellectual superiority. He was playing a game, and Jenkins and Thorne were the unwilling participants. The final, terrifying thought struck Jenkins. If they had a name, a strong suspect, then he knew it too. And a cornered animal, especially one as cunning and narcissistic as the Nocturne Killer, was the most dangerous kind. The unfolding sonata was nearing its climax, and they knew, with a certainty that chilled them to the bone, that the final movement would be the most violent yet. The city held its breath, unknowingly awaiting the final, terrifying notes. The name Elias Croft buzzed through the precinct with an electrifying, almost tangible energy. It was a name that finally offered substance to the shadow that had terrorized Los Angeles for months.